And welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swale. Today, I'm joined by Tony Bennett, the president and CEO of the Texas Association of Manufacturers, a position he has held since 2012. The Texas Association of Manufacturers gives voice to more than 600 small and large companies at the state capitol, as well as in Washington, D.C. Mr. Bennett, how are you doing?
Doing great today, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Before doing this, as I was prepping for the show, I wasn't aware that you've been in this position for now 12 years. It'll be, I guess, 13 years next August, is my understanding. And you must be doing something right for them to keep you around that long.
Well, I had 35 years in corporate America with a conglomerate that did everything from paper industry, wood products manufacturing, real estate, oil and gas, a lot of things that help you prep for a job like this. Because when you're running a trade association for manufacturing in a state as big as Texas, you become a jack of all trades pretty quick.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I'm not entirely sure what the manufacturing landscape looks like in Texas, but my understanding is that it's, there's some variability there. Can you give me just a little bit of history you talked a little bit about your history there, about the history of the Texas Association of Manufacturers and sort of, what do y'all do? What's the goal? What's the purpose? What makes you wake up in the morning?
Well, just a little background about the state of Texas and manufacturing in general, which will lead to how we got this group started. Texas, for 22 years in a row now, has been the number one manufacturing export state in the United States. Number one for 22 years. Obviously, that's impressive when you're the eighth largest economy in the world, bigger than Russia, Spain, Australia, etc. I believe even Canada. And so you're dealing with a vast and diverse industry. There's manufacturing of all kinds. We track and have membership in at least 2 dozen major manufacturing industry sectors. And by that, I mean aerospace, automotive, pulp and paper, petrochemical, etc., semiconductors, you name it. So there was a manufacturing group back in the 60s. It got molded into, I guess, the state chamber at one time. And so the state was without a manufacturing association. When I retired from my company after 35 years, and I helped start this group in 2005 while I was employed with a corporation. And so I got a good idea of working 15 states and Washington, D.C., what this state might need for a good association to help make manufacturing, what it should be in the state of Texas. And that is, number one and really able to compete globally with just about any economic sector that wants to do business in the state of Texas. So we're celebrating next year our 20th year here at the Texas Association of Manufacturers. And it was really a group comprised of corporate government relations experts and regulatory experts and attorneys that are interested in growing jobs in manufacturing. And that's what we do. We handle strictly regulatory and legislative issues only for manufacturers in the state of Texas. You have to be a manufacturer to be a member, a voting member of the association. We do have a handful of partner members, but by and large, a partner member would be somebody like a pipeline company or something of that nature. So it's usually very much tied to manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so the group is, 600 members strong. I would say about 70 of those members are your large, major name brand type corporations that you would recognize immediately
Yeah.
in every sector you can think of.
Cool. So, I want to ask you, I mean, you mentioned what is the largest manufacturing industry in Texas? Is it oil related? I mean, I'm sure with the Gigafactory being opened up in Travis County here, right down the road from me, I think I'm not sure if you're in Austin, you probably are down the road from you too, maybe. Um, that maybe increase the car manufacturing. I don't know. What is the largest industry?
Well, oil and gas is definitely by billions of dollars is probably going to rate as the largest. Electronics are right in there as well, and that would include semiconductors. We're the number one semiconductor manufacturing state in the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
So you've got you've got the obvious uh, large industry sectors. We have automotive here in the state, food product manufacturing, heavy machinery and equipment like Caterpillar, et cetera. You've got a host of huge industry sectors, and manufacturing is employing today nearly 1 million Texans directly,
Yep.
has a very high jobs multiple rate. By that I mean for every manufacturing job you have within the fence of the plant, you support another 4 jobs, up to 6 jobs outside of the fence,
Yep.
indirect employment. So that's huge. It's a huge economy.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the person that sells it, the owner of the business that sells the thing, and yeah, there's jobs outside of there that you're supporting. So what is the state of manufacturing in Texas? It sounds like it's doing well. It sounds like there's, I don't know if I wanted to go start a manufacturing company or something like that, I don't know how easy it would be. I imagine it's Texas and they're business friendly. It'd be relatively easy. But there's other parts to this question that I'm more interested in, stuff like education. I see education stories, especially in the past 2 years, that our students are lagging behind, and there's a lot of efforts to sort of bring that back up to par, to standard. And I'm wondering how the manufacturers in Texas sort of see that. Are they worried about it? Are they trying to play a role? What do you think about it?
Yeah, it is a big deal. Workforce education, skills development, what we call filling the talent pipeline and keeping it filled so that we can attract the advanced manufacturing entities that are looking for, in some cases, a more stable place to operate. And I think you know what's going on in China, other parts of the world where,
Sure.
they're really still trying to get back to the number one economy in the world, and that's the United States of America, or at least close to it. Reshore, what we call here at TAM, tech shoring. We prefer tech shoring, but everyone is trying to get at least near shoring back to the largest economy in the world. And Mexico and Canada will be beneficiaries of that, et cetera. So, we are always looking for skilled employees. We're having to upskill employees in many cases, in many sectors ourselves. The companies have their own programs, or they work with their community colleges, or they work with the Texas State Technical College system. Very specific, very narrow, to the point education that young people can have a fantastic career in manufacturing, start off making great money, and be at 6 figures within 5 years easily.
Yeah.
Great benefits. And so, workforce education is a huge issue for us.
Yeah, and when you say upskilling, and as you say that some manufacturers themselves will have a program for them, is that I'm trying to think about what that might mean. Is that more like, I worked at a Ford factory and now I'm going to work at a Tesla factory, but Tesla does things a little bit different. Maybe it's a little bit more, I don't know, more electronics in the car, and they want you have a set of skills that work great, but we want you to be able to slide right into our systems better, or is it something else?
Upskilling most of the time means take for example, you were in one industry sector or you're a veteran and you're leaving Fort Cavazos, north of Austin, and you're going back to the real world. You've got a lot of skills, but you want to work for the semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
You're going to have to obtain some basic tech skills to join that program somewhere in the fab of that, wafer manufacturer.
Yeah.
So that's just an example. That could be true with automotive, with aerospace, machinery, manufacturing, textiles, steel industry. Just wherever you lack the skills, you can upskill into your preferred sector that you want to move to.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think of manufacturing as, really working with your hands, building something, which I think is true. And as we talk about education and the importance of an educated workforce, especially to help manufacturing, when I was in high school, I don't know, I guess it was middle school, so 25 years ago, 26 years ago, I took a woodworking class. And I think that's gone now. And most of I guess they slid more into a technology centered, working with computers, coding, that sort of thing, which I think is valuable. Uh, is there room for, you know, uh, do we have to just do it at the community college level or at the university level or technical university level? Could there be room for high schools to bring back, I don't know, workshops, automotive work, woodworking, even, I don't know, maybe some sort of uh, wafer producing, chip producing type, classes where kids can, slide into those industries relatively easily.
No, you would be shocked at what's going on today, and you just described it very well. Instead of wood shop and metal shop like you and I might have had in high school, kids today can go. They can have their basic classes at high school, and then that afternoon go to the community college or go to their apprenticeship at an automotive plant
Yeah.
or somewhere like that if they have meet the age requirement and literally take what we call classes that provide them stackable credentials.
Yeah.
And by that, we mean they don't have to wait, necessarily 2 years or 4 years for a degree and a 4-year degree with a whole lot of debt.
Yeah.
They can literally, get trained in a very specific area, get college credit. And then these kids are, for the first time in their lives, introduced to college. And think about that and the incentive and the opportunity that it provides kids that probably would have never gone to college. So they start earning college credit. They start earning, what we call industry-based certification. And that's when they start making the money. And then
Yeah.
when they get out of high school, they can start working and many times and get college credit while they're working and move up the ladder of the industry sector that they so chose.
Yeah. So what you're describing, I guess that's the state of it today. If I was in high school today, I could, get out of school, whatever time they get out. What was it? 3:30, 4, something like that. I don't know. And then go work taking certifications and working, getting hands-on experience at whatever manufacturer. But is there, is that, would it be more successful if it was in the classroom, or in the school, I should say? There's a woodworking metal shop, whatever it is in the school where that's a class, an elective that they can take, and they don't have to spend the after school hours doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of our high schools, particularly in the metro areas, like for example, Arlington has a huge workforce center that teaches everything
Okay.
from automotive, culinary arts, even floral design, electronics. Uh, there's, I believe, some aerospace classes there.
Yeah.
It looks like a community college. It is a massive facility. The kids have taken very well to it. In fact, they're going to have to add on, and it opened during COVID,
Yeah,
and they really got it. It was delayed, but it is an overwhelming success. So that is a high school community college, is what it
sure.
is. And that is true in many other cities around the state of Texas.
Yeah, I would like to think that if that existed when I was in high school, I would have gone to it. That sounds really
Yeah,
cool.
a lot of
Maybe,
kids are going. It's
yeah,
overwhelming.
maybe it's the wisdom of my age that makes it sound appealing. I'm not too sure. So when it comes to energy, I mean, manufacturing consumes a lot of energy. Um, and, I don't know if I think it was a few months ago, I think it was Dan Patrick released something about crypto and data miners taking up a lot of energy growth over the coming years in Texas, which isn't necessarily manufacturing, but it does affect manufacturing if the grid is less reliable. I know there's a history of ERCOT asking manufacturers to shut down to stabilize the grid in recent years. Um, have there been recent wins that y'all have had with with securing more energy for manufacturers? And how does that look going forward in the future?
Yes, the big deal. We had the two storms, Winter Storm Uri and then Winter Storm Elliott. Uri was, of course, the one where so many people lost their lives, and it was a horrible, much worse storm. But Elliott did knock the power down again. And so, with all of this influx of renewable energy, we have lost the balance of the old standby natural gas and years ago, the coal plants that were built here. Those are called base load plants. You can start them up, within a few hours and get them going, and they don't shut down. They can go, go, go. And of course, wind and solar have their fuel is obvious.
Yep.
And when the sun ain't shining and the wind isn't blowing out in West Texas, you're going to go down. So we're starting to, emphasize what we call dispatchable generation, which is natural gas primarily today, and nuclear, but nuclear takes decades to get approved, to get built. So the quickest thing that we can get done and get a plant built within a year or two is going to be natural gas peaking plants that can turn on in 30 minutes to an hour and save the grid from going down. And so they're expensive. People that want to invest in these have all sorts of concerns about how long will they be worth their salt when you're seeing battery storage come down the pipe and lots of other competing generation sources. So there's been kind of a lull in how many of these dispatchable generation plants have been built. And so we did pass a bill last session called the Texas Energy Fund, which will give low interest loans and some grants for dispatchable generation. It's been an overwhelming response. There's finalize contracts, within months, and we could see some new, very much needed power generation built in the state of Texas
Uh,
soon.
that's great. So I want to ask about the nuclear, but before we move on to that, I live in Austin and I pay attention to local news as well as state news pretty intensely. Just recently, the Electric Utility Commission here in Austin, which is it's a board appointed by the city council members here in Austin. I'm not picking on Austin specifically. It's just one that I know about. I'm sure this happens in other cities as well. The Austin Energy is trying to get out of coal, get out of natural gas for their green energy initiative and everything like that, and get out of the Fayette coal power plant, their share of it. They are talking about firing up or building some, what are they, peaker plants, I think is what they're called, just for short-term generation to sort of balance out their demands during the high demand times. Um, I'm wondering, as the Gigafactory is a great example of manufacturer here locally, here in Austin. There's the Samsung uh, facility in Taylor, Texas, north of here. I'm not sure if they're with Austin Energy or not, but these local, uh, the locally owned energy providers here in Texas, I'm not sure how many there are, but maybe the private ones do this too, trying to get off of the natural gas, get off of the coal, and just go solely towards natural gas. Or I'm sorry, go towards wind and solar. Is that concerning for Texas manufacturers?
Yeah, very much so. And we love wind, we love solar. We have manufacturers that make all those components. We cannot back up the renewable generation with battery storage yet. So you are forced to make sure there is adequate backup baseload power.
Yeah,
What I said earlier, dispatchable generation. You're not, the big power generation folks know you're not going to be able to transition immediately to renewable. Battery storage is probably 5 to 10 years off for large scale, where millions of homes can be powered using batteries. Not to mention, how are you going to do, back up a semiconductor fab that if you have just a little glitch in your power for a millisecond, it can ruin several days or weeks of a batch of microchips, costing tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. So, it's really important to have reliable power, resilient power, which means all your poles and wires that deliver it to residential folks and to business and industry, that the trees are trimmed and the maintenance is done on the distribution system. But then all you got to do all that while being affordable,
yeah,
competitively affordable. And so all of that has to be done, and it's not easy.
yeah.
Uh, so we're really hoping that we get a good response on the Texas Energy Fund and solve some of the problems that we've had. And we're growing, the capacity of the grid. Things have improved greatly since the two storms.
That's great to hear. You mentioned that nuclear can take decades to sort of get approved and built and stuff like that. I keep hearing, especially over the past few years since the storms and all the talk about renewables and clean energy and stuff like that. It seems like it's gaining in popularity. Is the 2 decades? No, that's not. I'm not going to quote you on that, like sue you if you're wrong kind of thing. It's close, whatever. 2 decades. Is that something from federal regulation or state regulation? Is there something the state of Texas could do to speed that process up potentially?
It's predominantly federal regulation, EPA and Department of Energy and things of that nature. But there's a lot of promising things going on with small modular reactors, which are much smaller than what you would have, at Glen Rose or down at the South Texas nuclear plant. These are, of course, they don't have the capacity that the giant nuke plants have,
Yeah.
but real promising technology. Abilene Christian, I believe, has got a project that they're going to build there right there on campus, and UT is looking at doing some things with some of the chemical industry down on the coast. I think you're going to see small modular reactors pop up. They can be permitted much more quickly. And once, a good design is adopted, I'm sure it will sell like hotcakes
Yeah.
and be be backup for lots of industries, lots of cities, and they can make them much more safe. And I think that's coming. We're
Yeah.
probably 10 years away from that really taking hold, but nevertheless, it's on the drawing board.
Yeah. There's some proof of concepts out there that are in the works.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned EPA, so that sort of is a good segue into sort of federal policy. I know the next administration is talking a lot about tariffs and, changing, trying to, in an effort to encourage manufacturing here in the United States. Love it or hate it, there's a lot of people that make points on both sides. I'm wondering, how that may affect the manufacturing here in Texas. As big as it is, as important as it is, um, is that something that do you work within, or how are y'all approaching that potential?
Well, it affects every sector differently. That there will be some targeted sectors, automotive may be targeted because, there really isn't any such thing as a made in the United States car.
Yeah.
It might be finally assembled here, but everybody knows that just about anything you can think of, the components come from all over the world,
Yeah.
and you may very well have, the final product assembled here in the state of Texas, which we're totally happy with. A tariff is a tax. We don't like taxes, but they
Yep.
are necessary evils. And
Yeah.
you've got you've got to make sure that they're fair and that they don't, provide or force you to see more taxes. If we do anything to Mexico, they may retaliate. Same thing with Asia and Canada. We're going to go through that. I'm sure there's a method to the madness with the administration, incoming administration, and the Trump administration is very pro-manufacturing. We're encouraged by that fact. We'll have to work with them through the tariff episode again, like
Yep.
like we went through, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Is there a lot of hope with the deregulation efforts that this administration may enact?
Very much so, because the last administration, while they did some good things, that there were a lot of regulatory things that were just maddening. And here in the state of Texas, shutting down LNG, construction and tying the hands of the oil and gas industry and shutting off oil fields on federal property and out in the Gulf. That killed tens of thousands of jobs here in Texas alone.
Yeah. Is there a threat from AI in manufacturing, whether it be, pure AI or automation? I know the recent dock workers strike on the East Coast, which is not really manufacturing, but that was a major sticking point for them. Is that something the manufacturers of Texas, do they welcome that sort of thing to improve efficiency? Is there concern about it taking the place of I don't know, human workers? How do y'all feel about that?
Well, you really don't have the opportunity to feel any way other than get ready
Okay,
because
fair enough.
there's no option. It's here already.
Interesting.
And everything is going to be AI driven. If you haven't hired your AI staff at your company yet, you're way, way behind, and your competitors are going to eat you alive. Your supply chain is going to be AI driven. Your warehouses and inventory are going to be AI driven. Your manufacturing production will be AI driven. Quality control, everything. Does that mean there's going to be no humans in the plant? Absolutely not. Are they going to be more highly skilled humans? Absolutely. And so you will have, certainly there will still be maintenance required and lower skilled jobs, but there's going to be a huge demand for high skilled manufacturing techs and experts in robotics and AI and data centers. You mentioned data centers a while ago. Data centers are critical to manufacturing. All of my member companies have data centers or access to space on the cloud.
Yep.
And you've got to have just the brains of modern day advanced manufacturing.
Yeah. And that circles back to the high end, high skilled workers, manufacturer workers. That circles back to the education importance that we talked about earlier. Getting students interested in and getting them training early on so that they can slide into these roles with a lot more ease, I would think.
Absolutely.
So, to sort of wrap up the conversation, I know the 89th, as you know as well, probably better than I do, the 89th legislature is about to start in, I think, January. Is that correct? Or early February? January?
In January,
January.
January 14th.
That's right. I was thinking January 15th, but 14th is correct.
It
So
may be. It may be.
either way, it's mid-January.
I'll be here regardless.
Um, what are y'all's priorities for the 89th legislature, if I may ask?
Well, we have quite a few. I think, something that we've already kind of touched on, research and development is critical to advance manufacturing. That tax incentive, if you will, expires, believe it or not, in the state of Texas, and there won't be one unless we renew it this session. That's going to be very critical. Right now, Texas has a 5% franchise tax, sales tax, um, R&D exemption credit. California has a 36% program. Communist China has a 200% super deduction. So that tells you where we are in the global sphere of
So
competitiveness.
we're 5%, California's 36%, I think you said, and California's, or not California, I'm sorry, California, China, whatever.
Yeah,
China, 200%.
that's correct.
It sounds like, yeah, it sounds like we could make, there's room to bump that up a little bit.
There is now, to be fair to our great state, we do have other tax incentive programs,
Sure.
but on R&D, not to get too complicated here, that's where we stand today. So we have room to grow and
Yeah.
improve. So, electricity is going to continue to be something we want to, get finalized, and it never is finalized really because I've been doing this now. I've been at the Capitol for 40 years, and it's always on the docket. But we're transitioning to new power generation, like we've talked about. So that will be a big deal on both sides of the Capitol, in the House and the Senate. And we will want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction there. And then also, that's under the category of infrastructure. And another thing that's popping up is water, or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
This state continues to grow rapidly. Both, water is necessary for human survival, and it's also necessary for economic survival. And we have got to have more water. So we need a dedicated water fund, which we do not have today, but we have a surplus estimated between 20 billion. And if you count the rainy day fund in there, we have like $32 billion
Yeah.
of surplus money. Surely we can shave off a little bit of that and come up with a dedicated water fund, and we're going to be asking for that. We're also going to be doing a whole lot more with community college programs that help workforce development. The Texas State Technical College, for example, cannot levy property taxes. The other community colleges can, so they don't have the kind of financial wherewithal to build campuses. They have 11 right now around the state. They need more. They need to expand them. We're asking for a fund for them to be able to count on, providing ongoing money for them to grow their campuses. We're going to be watching the property tax relief. All of us that own a home love homestead exemptions. They're great,
Yeah.
but they simply shift the tax burden to business and industry when you do that.
Yeah.
And business and industry pays a much higher rate. That is typically a permanent tax exemption, even though the state has to cough up the money every year to pay for it and relieve the schools of that. Because if a school cancels a homestead exemption, that's not good.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do that. And the state doesn't want to cancel theirs either. So we have to continually come up with that. Um, we're not really involved in the voucher issue.
Yeah.
We are, always interested in making sure that education generally has appropriate funds to operate. But as I said before, workforce development education is where we spend most of our time.
Yeah, and I mean, when you mentioned it before, I didn't bring it up because it's this is more about you guys and policy and not necessarily politics. But I would think that center that you talked about up in Arlington to workforce development, that would be a great draw if there was a voucher program for kids to stay in the public schools. Because I mean, I wouldn't want my kids to lose access to something like that. So I think that's really interesting. Well, Tony Bennett, I really appreciate you taking the time. You're the CEO and president of the Texas Association of Manufacturers. Is there a website or social media that you'd like to plug?
Yes, our website is www.manufacture with an E on the end, Texas, spelled out TEXAS.org.
Okay.
That is our website, manufacturetexas.org.
Okay, great. And I think that I'm looking at it right now. There's links for your social media there so people can find that. But we'll put those down in the description below. Tony Bennett, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad. Enjoyed it.